In less than 20 seconds, the building crashes to the ground. As the dust settles, it becomes clear the entire superstore has collapsed. What was once a symbol of Seoul's economic prosperity is now just a massive pile of twisted steel and concrete. Smoke seeps from the wreckage, and 1,500 people are trapped. Within minutes, rescue teams, police, and fire crews drag the dead and injured free of the wreckage. Television crews broadcast the tragedy live to the nation. South Korea has never witnessed a peacetime tragedy on this scale before. The death toll will be massive. The disaster site is a scene of utter chaos. Grief-stricken relatives and friends search for survivors. Among them is Park's lifelong friend, So-hee-jin. The two were supposed to meet this evening.
I was shocked. So many injured and bleeding. The dead being carried away.
So knows that her best friend must be somewhere in the rubble.
I start scrambling at the rubble with my hands. I keep digging. I don't know why I'm doing it. I just need to do something.
Almost 35 feet below So, underneath thousands of tons of debris, is all that's left of basement level 1. There, in a space half the size of a telephone booth, lies Yoo Ji-won. She's badly injured, but incredibly still alive.
I can feel a hole in my head, so large my finger can go through it. That's how big it is. And I can feel something squiggly in a cut on my back, like my intestine. I don't want to die.
The scale of the rescue operation is massive. 1,000 rescue workers and volunteers desperately try to free bodies from the wreckage. By nightfall, more than 30 cranes and excavators are on site to speed up the rescue. They work through the night, carefully removing huge slabs of debris. By morning, more than 200 people are rescued. But 44 are dead, and more than 600 others are missing. Thousands of tons of concrete and steel hang dangerously over the site. Many bravely risk their lives to free victims. The north face of the building is tilting and could fall at any moment. By the end of the second day, the danger is just too great, and officials are forced to abandon the search for survivors. More than 500 relatives take to the street, pleading with officials to resume the rescue. In the protests, fights break out with riot police. Calling off the search now would be a death sentence for you and countless others trapped in the wreckage. Seconds from disaster will continue in a moment. A massive rescue effort stalls at the site where the Sampung Superstore once stood. Relatives demand that the search continue. By the morning of the third day, engineers stabilize the north wing with cables, and the rescue operation continues. For Yoo Ji-won, trapped for over 72 hours, her chances of survival are dwindling.
I think a lot about the short life I have had. all of those close to me, my friends, and especially my mother.
Relatives gather daily to identify the corpses pulled from the wreckage. Park Sing-hyung's friend So is there. She sees a photo that strikes fear in her heart.
The picture shows a decapitated corpse. It is wearing the same ring Park had on. I pray it's not her.
But at the hospital, she discovers the ring is different. It's not her friend's.
It's so good when I realize it isn't Park. I know she could still be alive.
On day 4, the death toll reaches 107. And rescue workers know many more are missing. The rubble is constantly compressing, crushing those still trapped inside. The wall above you is now just inches from her face. By chance, she finds a knife beside her.
I think about killing myself. I can't take the horror anymore. But then I realize that actually it's easy to become very selfish and not think of the effect it would have on the people I love.
Day after day passes, and body after crushed body is found. Then, after a full week, authorities decide there is little hope. Without water, a person can only survive for about 3 days in 85-degree heat. For relatives, the announcement is devastating. The rescue effort turns into a recovery operation. Heavy machinery moves in to clear the tons of rubble from the disaster site. Another 5 days go by, and nearly 21,000 tons of wreckage has been cleared. Then, just after 3:30 in the afternoon, 12 days after the collapse, there's an astonishing discovery.
Around where my foot was, suddenly it just opened up. There was a hole.
Yu Ji-won is found alive.
And I can hear a voice asking, "Is there someone in there?"
Yu has survived in a space barely larger than her body. She has spent 285 hours trapped in searing heat, drinking rainwater to stay alive.
I can't really explain it, but it's just happiness. I feel like I'm flying, that I'm freed from everything. Everyone knows who I am, and even if I die now, everything I've worried about has been taken away.
Yu is rushed to the hospital and put into intensive care. She has lost more than 10% of her body weight, but her injuries are relatively minor. In total, 937 people are seriously injured. 502 have perished. Grief turns to anger. Why did a modern reinforced concrete building that stood for over 6 years collapse? What kind of catastrophe could raze it to the ground in less than 20 seconds? And who, if anyone, is to blame? Now, by rewinding the events of that day and by going deep into the investigation, we can reveal exactly what caused the worst building collapse in South Korea's history. Within an hour of the disaster, the prosecution office orders a full-scale inquiry, and there's only one man for the job. Long Chung is the professor of civil and structural engineering at Danguk University. His knowledge of South Korea's construction industry is unsurpassed. But as Professor Chung arrives at the disaster site, even he isn't prepared for what he sees.
It's impossible to describe what I feel. So many people are crushed in the rubble. It's a huge shock.
Chung knows that to cause this level of destruction, something devastating must have happened.
I've never seen a building collapse so completely. It's utter chaos.
He resists the urge to jump to conclusions, but one theory seems fitting right away. Sampung could be the latest gas-related disaster. In the last 8 months, South Korea has been rocked by 2 massive explosions caused by leaking gas. The most recent was at Daegu subway in Seoul. The blast killed over 100 people and injured 140. The scenes look all too familiar.
I'm 80 to 90% sure a gas explosion is responsible for this disaster.
Chung knows one thing will prove if gas is to blame. Fire. Gas explosions have a distinct signature. They almost always produce an inferno. But although parts of the building are ablaze, thick smoke isn't the evidence Chung needs.
The fire is not from the blast, but from gasoline burning in the cars that have been crushed in the basement.
Unable for now to prove the gas theory, Professor Chung considers a more sinister cause, a terrorist bomb.
An explosion damaging the interior columns of the building could have caused this.
North Korean militants are the obvious suspects. 2 previous bombings have killed 136 innocent people. But a terrorist attack in the heart of the capital would be a horrifying new strategy. Seconds from disaster will continue after this. Investigator Long Chung is trying to determine if the disaster at the Sampung Superstore was caused by a terrorist bomb. It bears a striking resemblance to another shocking event in the U.S. On April 19, 1995, just 10 weeks prior, a terrorist bomb blew up the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. 168 people were murdered. Could the disaster at the Superstore be a similar case, where a bomb triggers a large-scale collapse? The 2 buildings were of similar construction, so was there anything to learn from the U.S. investigation?
One of the first things I try to do is imagine how the collapse progressed, how the building got from a state standing up, ordinary state, down to a pile of rubble on the ground.
Glenn Bell has been a structural engineer for 30 years. He has investigated many high-profile building disasters, including the Oklahoma bombing. A bomb explosion has its own unique mark, a footprint that investigators call a debris field.
In the Oklahoma City bombing, we see debris was blown out sideways from the face of the building from the explosion.
The wreckage was thrown nearly 1,000 feet from the structure, forming a distinct pattern. But as Chung surveys the scene from Sampung, he notices one striking difference. The debris wasn't thrown outward.